So good evening, everyone. I want to call the City of Lake Forest Park City Council Budget and Finance meeting for Thursday, May 18th to order, please. And first, I'd like to hear a motion for the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
We're here second.
I think only we can do that.
You're the on the committee,
right?
Only the three of us and John's not here.
Oh, that's right. John's not here.
So-
John is not remote. So I will second it then. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion,
No,
colleagues?
sir.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, sorry, the vagaries of a small group. And tonight we have two items on our agenda. First, we have the director's report with the budget monitoring dashboard. And second, we have the capital improvements project update. And first from Director Vaughn. Welcome, Lizzie.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask for a little assistance from our city clerk I'm buying him just a hair of time in order to put up the April's budget monitoring dashboard. A little bit more time. There it is. Thank you so much, Matt. So if we could scroll up just a little bit to the top. Perfect. So starting in on the first item, the ARPA Fiscal Recovery Fund, this one doesn't exactly follow. It's under the title of operating departments, but it doesn't exactly follow the operating in the sense of for other items within the city. These are more one-time funds. So the fact that this is over what we would define as being on target for April is not concerning. It is actually the local 104 has started submitting for reimbursements and we have started to pay those. So that's what that is associated with. And then I'm just going to walk down and continue to go over the items that are in yellow and highlight those first. And if you have questions.
Vice Chair Casper, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I've been following the national news and there are some proposals in Congress that any unspent ARPA funds may need to be returned. So I was wondering how much of these ARPA funds are left? And how much do you think local 104 might be submitting for? And do we have firm plans for the rest of the ARPA money? What can you tell me?
I do not think that the city of Lake Forest Park will be sending back any of the ARPA funds. But that probably is a conversation that we would need to have a discussion about together and prepare a little bit more before I just go offhand here, because it truly is a group discussion about how we're going to spend the rest of the funds. But there's plan A, B, all the way through quite a few. There's some public works projects we could bring into it. So I just think that's probably best to maybe just wait on that conversation, and I'll make a note and we can possibly circle back at the next budget and finance.
I think that's going to be too late.
Okay, we can circle back soon.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Casper. It was actually a question that was raised late as I can speak into it. I think we do need to look at this very carefully, because unallocated funds, they're threatening to fall back. We can't have an A, B, and C. We actually have to have them allocated or we're going to lose them. And I think it's going to happen. Ms. Fulton.
On point, I'm looking at an article from the National League of Cities, and they say the term is unobligated, not unallocated. And according to the article, what they're saying is that it's unobligated by the federal government. But since the funds have been distributed by the Department of the Treasury to state and local, so there's the state and local fiscal relief funds program is not expected to be in jeopardy. So I think, so at least, I mean, this is not a legal article, it's a National League of Cities, but they seem to be saying that since the Treasury gave it out, it's been obligated.
Thank you for that. Because we're really.
Yeah, just fingers crossed.
I'll email you that article. Right, Bob?
That doesn't quite square with other things I've read, but thank you. Let's hope that that's correct.
Yeah, and Director Vaughn, not to put you on the spot on this one, this is really like in the last few days, it's getting kind of accelerated, so. We need to. Really, a serious plan here. Yeah. Any
Okay.
other thoughts on point?
On point, even if what Councilmember Goldman says is true, it would be wise to us ourselves allocate the money so that we in fact, can rightfully claim that the money has been spoken for.
Thank you, Councilman. I'm sorry, Director Vaughn.
I was just going to state that that we will circle back as soon as possible then on this topic. I don't want to throw anything out there at this moment. But we will circle back on this topic then very soon.
Thank you very much. Please continue.
So then walking down to detention and jail, this item has been trending at this point high for about a year. And so it's definitely one that we're watching, paying attention to, and maybe having a discussion a little bit further at the mid-buy on. So that's just an item that we are watching. The environmental services, there was a final invoice that was paid for the restoration of Maclear Creek that the city had, that was tied back to the waterworks grant. So it does look like for that small amount of money that we are at 60%, but those were technically grant funds that the city has been reimbursed for. So then walking down to facilities, which is also yellow, that is just at 17% and the target is 16.7. Yes, it does trigger into the yellow item, but it's not one to really be concerned about because one of the items within there is an annual cost of the insurance, which can skew some of the operating.
If we could pause just for a minute, Director Vaughn, I just want to remind my colleagues too that you have been very helpful about reminding us, and the chief has as well, that the detention and jail costs continue to accelerate
Yes.
at a pace that's
Mhm.
not commensurate with other inflationary pressures. So the administration has definitely been keeping a real close eye on that, and I appreciate that. And then if we could just maybe go down a few lines and then pause for questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So walking down to municipal services, again, this is a very lean department that the main driver that is taking that over the on target is the annual insurance cost. And then if we could scroll down a little bit, perfect, thank you. Down to the street operations, again, at 17%, that is not an item to be too concerned about since the on target is at about 16.7. But one of the main drivers on that also is the annual insurance that a small portion is paid for from a smaller portion is paid for by streets. Then going down to the surface water utility operations, this item and sewer and surface water, both of those had some, if you remember back from earlier this year, they had some larger 2022 invoices that just didn't quite make the cutoff. So they technically have hit our 23 budget because we only have 20 days, to pay previous fiscal year invoices, and we do our best to meet that, but then we have to move forward. So actually at this time, I will pause for questions as was requested by my budget chair. French, sorry about that.
Questions, please.
Just a minor question. I know most of the greens are yay, good, but I was curious about the traffic safety camera operating costs being lower. Is there a particular reason that that's running below what we anticipated in costing?
Because there's a couple things that are built into that. Yes, it is running a little bit lower, but there are some costs that go into maintaining those traffic cameras that we then tie back to that expenditure line item to make sure that previously the city just, we've tried to make it more transparent of the true cost of the traffic cameras and maintaining them, and some of the maintenance that we have to do with signs and et cetera that go along with them to keep the true cost together. And so some of those items, which you will start to see probably some of those costs coming in around the summer time frame, because those are more seasonal costs. And then in addition, I do believe that contract will be up for renewal within this biennium.
So we'll see it catch up in the summer when the work happens.
So there's a couple items on that.
Okay, thank you. That clarification.
Councilmember Furtado.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Vaughn, for a great report as always. And so my takeaway from this is not all yellow is created equal in terms of these watercolors. It's a great thing for us to know.
That is a great way to concisely.
But my question was that you cited the 16.7% figure as the target percentage for a couple of these. And, this is dated as of April 30th, 2023, which is a third of the way through the calendar year. And so normally my naive view of it would be, shouldn't we have spent 33% of the budget at this point?
It's based on 2 years. So it's a 24-month period. And this is where I should probably start every single meeting by reminding that the 16.7, that the percentage comes based off of the 24-month period.
Right, thank you.
Thank you for that point to bring that back up.
Lindsay, that's not on you. It's on me as well. It's a foundational thing. We should. From an educational standpoint, Mr. Furtado, we should be sharing that with the public. Exactly. Thank you.
Are there any other questions before I move on? Okay, so let's walk down to the non-operating departments. The audit, that cost hasn't quite hit our budget yet. We will be walking into that, anticipating sometime, probably likely, it's an estimate, just this summer. So we'll be looking at walking into another audit. Then going down to community programs, again, that doesn't follow like the operating, but those costs for our community partners are starting to come in, and we're reimbursing those. On the elections, emergency management and membership, all of those, well, the elections, let me pause there. Elections and emergency management, those are more annual costs. So the fact that we're at 46 and 47% is not alarming. It's actually normal. And then the emergency management, that's where the city of Lake Forest Park pays for NEMCO. So just as a reminder there. Going down to the memberships are typically an annual. So to be at 40%, I think we only have 1 or 2 outstanding memberships that are left to be paid for 2023. And should I pause there or continue to revenue by fund? Are there any questions?
I think we're good.
Okay, so walking over to the revenue by fund, the ARPA fiscal recovery fund, on this one, we've already received 100% of that revenue. And so unlike some of the other departments that are operating and we're receiving that revenue as ongoing, we are not going to receive any more ARPA fiscal recovery fund revenue. And so that's going to show that we aren't receiving it, but we've already received it. So then walking down to the capital improvement fund, this is tied to REIT 1. And it's also tied to the King County Parks levy, which this time of year for the real estate excise tax tends to be a little bit on the slower side anyway. It's definitely one that we pull out and we watch by line item. And so it is one because it does affect two funds, the capital improvement fund and the transportation capital fund. And we will definitely be watching both of those closely to just kind of capture both of them. And we don't receive the King County levy, parks levy, which also goes into the capital improvement fund until about the June timeframe. So that'll be in the next couple dashboards. So then walking down to the general fund, that is coming in on target as far as the revenues. And the big change there is that property taxes in April definitely start flowing in. On the sewer utility fund, again, 17%, that is on target. The street fund, that's at 12%, and that can tend to fluctuate. It's definitely one, that's the motor vehicle excise tax, and there's some franchise right-of-way permits. That's what's within the revenue side of that fund. Going down to the surface water utility, back to the same conversation, it's paid in similarly to property tax. So those two you will see will follow the April-October timeframe. And then walking down to the transportation capital fund at 2%, that does seem alarming, but remember that is highly tied to grant revenue. So it does follow the real estate excise tax, but mainly it's grant funding that drives that revenue. And so I will just on that. On the capital side of things, actually, I would like to just take a pass on that tonight because in order to let Director Perigo address that directly. And so if we can just kind of continue, and we will have that as part of a conversation together in a couple minutes. So then walking down to the revenue by line item, these are the ones that we as a group have kind of pulled out to keep a closer eye on. For the line item, business tax is definitely at 22%. The construction permits a little bit lower at 14%. But I've been in communication with Calvin on that, our building official, and he continues to tell me that we are very busy. And so that's just going to be something that we continue to monitor. The motor gas tax, the motor vehicle excise tax, that is within the street fund, and at 15% is coming in close to target. The mechanical and plumbing permits are definitely coming in at 28%, so they are overperforming where we would define being on target. And then passport revenue, that is trending up 18%. And so that one's definitely on target. Going to the real estate excise tax 1 and 2, you will similarly see that 8% tied back to the capital improvement fund that we were just talking about at 8% as one of the main driving revenues of that fund. The sales and use tax is coming in at 16%, which is right on target. And then the traffic safety camera revenue is coming in at 19%, which is a little bit above. And so that concludes my, are there any questions at this time from?
Colleagues, we're gonna run short on time and we do have a special meeting scheduled at 6:30, so. Mr. Perigo, is there any question? If you have a specific one. Yeah, please, Mr. Bergman.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Short question. The REIT one, tax 1 and 2 at 8%, that's like half of what it should be. Is that a concern?
It's definitely one we're going to keep our eyes on and continue to talk about every month with everything that's going on in the economy. It is one-time funds. I'm definitely paying attention to what's being said about the housing market. And it's one to follow. I don't have a crystal ball or a perfect answer on this one. It's definitely just one we're going to have to monitor and watch closely. And as we've done from the first mid-buy, when I walked through the door, we have taken revenue back at a mid-buy before because we thought that we had overestimated. And that door for that conversation will be open. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think that when we're going into spring to summer, that tends to be the season of selling homes. But just to get ahead of it, it's definitely one we're watching, we're paying attention to, and not afraid to have the real conversation of if we've overestimated and gotten ahead of ourselves, that we are very open to having that discussion at the mid-buy.
Thanks. Thank you. If we can move on, please, Mr. Parago, we've all been waiting for this. It's exciting. And hopefully we'll give you enough time.
I can make this very brief if you'd
Okay.
like.
We've had a lot of work into it, so
Okay.
I don't want to shortchange you.
No, that's fine. Again, there's 9 items that are listed on the capital on the second. On the budget sheet that we've got here. I'll just quickly go through them. A lot of them are zeroed out at this point because again, first few months of the year, we haven't really spent a whole lot in the capital side of things. The asphalt overlay and ADA ramps, that's going to be a coming attraction for late summer. As far as the paving work that we do with the county. The L90 culvert, we are at 60% plans completed on that. And we are fully funded on that project right now. We did receive an appropriation that filled that gap that we had. So that's a great story there. The culvert 195th and 104 and SR 104, that's our project that we have with Shoreline. That's being run primarily through Shoreline. Again, we've got a small obligation with that going forward. At this point, it's still probably a couple of years away for that to take effect. Facilities projects, obviously you can see that some of the work that we've been doing recently, painting, we've got carpet that's coming. We've got some other big ticket items that will be coming also. We've got the BDA that's being placed shortly. So we've got all these other projects that are going to take place in the facilities. BDA is the bidirectional antenna for the police department. Thank you, Director Rod. The Lion Creek restoration, that mitigation right now is with the Corps of Engineers. They're taking a look at our mitigation plan and then going to provide guidance to us as far as how to proceed from here. And that's going to be an ongoing maintenance obligation for us. Material bin covers, we do have a scope that we're working on with our engineers to determine how to proceed with that. So that will be a coming attraction for design later on this summer and probably building next year is the idea. Pedestrian crossing over here at across 522, we're actually looking at the other option, which is the underground option that is grant funded. And that's going to be a coming attraction over the next several months also. And the roundabout, we later on this year, we're looking to do the property acquisition and have those discussions with the homeowners. And we're hoping that we can have the project bid by springtime of next year. Trying to fit the window of the weather that will cooperate with us. And Safe Streets Early Action, that's ongoing projects that we do with the traffic calming group. So that's kind of a rolling project, if you will. Very brief, I know. Any questions?
Comments? Questions? Comments?
Yes.
Vice Chair Sheffield.
Material bin covers.
I'm sorry.
So we have talked before about the possibility of adding solar panels to those bin covers, and I wondered whether that's anything that you're considering, that we can consider, that we could get some bids on, that there might be grant money for. What are your thoughts?
That is the design that we're looking for, is to have those be, as well as a separate issue would be putting solar panels on the shop that's out there Because that is south facing for one slope. What we're working on right now is trying to figure out how we do the solar banking and those sorts of things. And solar banking, how do we store the solar energy? And we will be talking to the utilities to see what help they can give us also. As well as perhaps commerce and any avenues that we can get some grant money, we're going to be going for it.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Answer your question. Councilmember Riddle.
Thank you. Just curious if any of your upcoming facilities projects or recent ones involved any sort of efficiency improvements or anything like that, or if they've been mostly just sort of cosmetic maintenance could you let me know?
At this point, that's not on the radar. However, that doesn't mean that we can't certainly plug something in for next year, perhaps. But again, the opportunity to put solar panels on top of City Hall is actually something that's doable, provided we get funding and can move forward with that from that perspective.
Yeah, thinking that HVAC, anything like that, let's keep that on our mind. And if we have an opportunity, let's seize those opportunities.
Mr. Goldman.
Yeah, thanks for the update. On the roundabout, you mentioned that possibly next spring, so spring 2024, we're getting bids. Do you have an estimate for what quarter we'd be seeing the design completion and construction?
I don't have that at this time. I would suspect, well, I don't want to suspect anything. Later on this year.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Any other additional thoughts? Thank you, Director Dargo. I think we have about 2 minutes before we need to start our special meeting. So we will call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you both.
Do we do a public comment?
Oh, my apologies. We're not adjourned. We have public comment is there anyone in the public or online that would like to make comment specifically on topics related to budget and finance only, please? If so, please signify by using the raise hand function online or by raising your hand in the audience if you. And we have a person. I think we're okay. Thank you for the reminder very much, Mr. Goldman. Okay, seeing no public comments pending, we'll be adjourned.